Hey, I'm Samantha Salmon, certified integrative nutrition coach and brain health licensed trainer. And I saw recently on YouTube Tom Avery, who used to be a long time raw vegan. More recently, he had shingles and decided to experiment with meat, I believe meat eggs. And now he's decided that he is no longer considering himself vegan, and he posted a video on the fact that he's no longer vegan. And there's been a lot of folks that have posted videos like this, a good amount anyway, and I'm always really curious about this, like why, because it seems strange. Plant-based definitely is great to stay in the plant-based kingdom, but for those who claim to be vegan and then are no longer, especially for folks who've done raw food, they seem to be more health conscious people. They're more mindful, or like they're intentional about being health conscious. So I'm always curious to know what made them change their mind or change their opinion on it. And so anyway, his video is out there. I'm not necessarily going to link to it, but that's what inspired this video that I'm doing right now. Just responding to some of the points that he made, just in case any of you who are watching this are dealing with a similar situation. And also something that a lot of us haven't been talking about, and I think just me saying the word is probably gonna affect my channel. However, I am not sharing anything that I just pulled out my ass, and I put all the citations in the description to this video, so you can see that what I'm sharing with you is based on the literature when I get to that point. Some of the other stuff, I could point you in those directions, but this should be just basic common knowledge at this point, especially for this community if you are health conscious and you read a lot, right? So the first thing is, and I'm just looking down at my notes, I have a few different notes in different places, but he said he's experimenting with being plant-based, and good for you, Tom Avery. Listen to your body. I think that's important to listen to your body. At the same time, I do want to address some of the things that he said that he's doing. He said he's now eating sardines. He said he wants the bones because it has calcium in it. And then he goes on to talk about the Bible and references Noah and all this stuff, okay? First, let's talk about fish and sardines and why I don't recommend fish for my clients or anybody that I love and care about. And that's because for a few reasons. There's heavy metals, mercury in the fish, right? But then somebody will respond and say, I go for the smaller fish that have a lighter load of that. Okay, fine. However, those smaller fish, like sardines, you're getting PFAS chemicals, you're getting microplastics, and you're also getting DDT, which is a banned carcinogen. So not only do you have the carcinogens, but you also have these endocrine disruptors. And if you are concerned about overall health and well-being and brain health, you definitely don't want to be messing with this, because if your endocrine system is being disrupted, your hormones are being disrupted, this is affecting how you're thinking, feeling, and behaving, how you're showing up in the world, how you're showing up in your relationships, right? We have people out here creating mass murders, crime and stuff, and honestly, like the case that I'm making around this, around crime and violence, right, is that each one of us, right, even those of us who go to church and we call ourselves Christian, we are frustrated by certain people and certain things, right? You have Luigi, what he did with murdering the CEO of United Healthcare. There's many of us out here that are frustrated about the insurance system, and yet we're not taking up a gun to shoot anybody. Why is that? It's the difference between a healthy brain and an unhealthy brain, right? And that's the position I stand on. And so if you want to keep yourself contained and manage yourself properly, you want to give your body the best possible stance. And that means staying away from these chemicals, especially the endocrine disruptors. And so you have that, plus the DDT, which is a carcinogen, right? If you don't want to get cancer because that's really scary and painful, just stay away from it, right? So that's why I recommend that folks stay away from fish, including the small fish. The fish are really fatty, and fat stores these toxic chemicals, right? And so you're just consuming toxic chemicals by way of these fish when you really don't need to. Okay, because he wants to eat it really for the calcium. And I would say you are able to get bioavailable calcium from vegetables, from fiber-rich sources. You can even juice them, and maybe they're not fiber-rich, but they're plant sources where you not only get the calcium, but you get a wide array of other phytonutrients, okay? Because a well-rounded plant-rich, plant-exclusive diet is not calcium deficient. You don't need to have fish for calcium, okay? Or eat bones, okay? He says that he believes in the Bible, and he referenced the story of Noah, and God told Noah basically the animals are for you, and I guess his interpretation means that we should be eating these animals. Okay, I will say on that point, I thought that was an interesting point that I've never heard before, so I wrote that down, but I'm not a biblical scholar, and so I don't really debate on Bible. If that's what you want to take your nutrition advice from, the Bible, okay. I prefer to go based on science coupled with how my personal constitution and microbiome is reacting to the food. So I don't make nutritional choices based on the Bible, nor do I advise other people to make nutritional choices based on the Bible. But if that's what you want to do, okay. And so I was told by somebody who has followed Tom Avery for a while that he was apparently afraid to eat nuts while he was doing the raw food diet. He was afraid to eat nuts due to the fat. And now he's made this full swing. And he got shingles, and now he's dealing with neuropathy, which he feels is from the shingles, and that is a possibility, right? That's a side effect from shingles is neuropathy. But there's another thing to think of with neuropathy, okay, where that could be coming from, because he is basically going back to eating animal products, trying to figure out how he can heal his body from the shingles and the neuropathy. And he's not the only person I've heard with this whole neuropathy story. I've heard plant-based folks talk about this neuropathy thing, and that's what I wanted to really dive into, because this is really interesting, right? We are all now living post-COVID, okay? And some folks they're having this, it's like, where is this coming from? Where's the inflammation coming from all of a sudden? Where are all these random issues coming from all of a sudden? And you have a lot of people say, oh, it's the vaccine, but is it really though? So I dived into the literature, the research. What are people researching out there? And I have all the citations in the description to this video. But here is what I found out. So basically, over 13 billion doses of the COVID-19 vaccine has already been distributed, right? And taken in by people. In the big scheme of things, you have this huge number of doses that are already out there, and there are people basically monitoring what adverse effects, because according to the literature, they expect anyway, when you put a vaccine out there, that there will be adverse events for some people, but they're gauging benefit and risk. And based on the numbers, there are a small number of cases in comparison to the amount of doses that have been taken already, where it's within reason for them. So 13 billion doses. And there are a few diseases that have come up after people have gotten the COVID-19 vaccine. 171 cases of Guillain-Barré syndrome, 40 of Parsonage-Turner syndrome. There's one called myasthenia gravis. There's been 22 cases. Facial nerve palsy, 19 cases. Small fiber neuropathy, there's been 5 cases, and Tolosa-Hunt syndrome, that's 1 case. And obviously, these people have to report somewhere. So I'm assuming the numbers have to be bigger because I don't think everyone is reporting. I'm assuming. But ultimately, Guillain-Barré syndrome was the most frequently reported condition. And the onset of it, right? So when is this thing happening? So what they found is that the earliest reported onset for some of the neuropathies were 2 days. The median onset time in several large case series were 4 to 13 days. Over 2/3 of the cases appeared within 2 weeks. But the general window where most initial symptoms are reported were 30 days after the COVID-19 shot. So what is Guillain-Barré syndrome? It's a rare disorder where the body's immune system attacks its nerves, causing weakness and potential paralysis. And ultimately, what is happening is that in the COVID-19 vaccine, there may be some compound or something that is basically mimicking a nerve cell. And as the vaccine is targeting the virus, it is seeing a nerve cell and targeting that as well and damaging that out of confusion. There was a meta-analysis of 138 cases that found a higher proportion of Guillain-Barré linked to specifically AstraZeneca vaccine. So if you got that, that's 56% of the Guillain-Barré cases was from the AstraZeneca vaccine, 20% was from the Pfizer, 7% from Johnson & Johnson, and then another 7% from Sputnik, and then there's 10% of other brands out there. So some of the symptoms of Guillain-Barré is progressive and ascending limb weakness, loss of reflexes, facial weakness or diplegia, paresthesias, which is basically tingling sensations. And it seems, based on the literature, they've been able to treat it successfully with IVIG therapy, which stands for intravenous immunoglobulin. Most patients with Guillain-Barré syndrome following the COVID-19 vaccination, they were treated with intravenous immunoglobulin, either alone, which was 75% of the cases, or in combination with a plasma exchange in 7% of the cases. And generally, the treatment, along with the plasma exchange and more supportive care from the team, generally led to a full or partial recovery for most patients, though some experienced persistent deficits or rarely fatal outcomes. In terms of the small fiber neuropathy, IVIG has also been used to treat it, alongside symptomatic therapy and corticosteroids. The fact that this has been working, the treatment has been working, further supports the idea that small fiber neuropathy is associated with the COVID-19 vaccines and that it may have an autoimmune basis. Now, what they're saying, though, is that this is showing a temporal association versus a causation, a proven causation. And so what's the difference between the two? The temporal association just means that it's happening within a time frame. So we know that the COVID vaccine is given and the patient is having this experience, this event within a time frame, and so within that 30 days. But what we don't know, what they're saying, more studies are needed, or just we need to be more watchful to see what shows up later, is to prove causation, where basically if we understood scientifically the mechanism of action, the mechanism for how the COVID-19 vaccine could be causing this, then we would have a proven causation. But until that time, we don't have proven causation, we have temporal association. So you can see there's a little bit of semantics game going on in the scientific space around this. I don't know, like in the general world, if people would feel the same, but that's how the researchers are looking at it. And I explain what the theory is. The theory is around the molecular mimicry, that a vaccine antigen is looking like a nerve cell and causing the immune system basically to attack nerve cells by mistake. And so I just wondered, for Tom Avery, could this be his situation? Did he get the COVID-19 vaccine? Could that have been how he ended up with neuropathy? And maybe it has nothing to do with diet. Because what I find is that sometimes some people, especially if they're not around the right community and they're not really plugging in to the literature or developing health literacy, they tend to blame plant foods, healthy, nutritious foods, for all that ails them. And our body is holistic. Food is not always the only cure for a thing, and it's also may or may not be the reason why you're having an adverse effect that just maybe popped up out of nowhere. There are other things going on, right? Our body is interacting with more things than food, like the COVID-19 vaccine. And so I just want to put that out there. I'm curious, for those of you who may or may not have been having some of these symptoms, what your thoughts are, what your takeaways are from this video. Please let me know in the comments below. And you can also check out my resources in the description, along with all the sources that I referred to talk about this. What the COVID-19 vaccines link that's being looked at, right? They've been looking at the VAERS, which is the database the government has for people to report adverse events when they take any type of vaccine. So it's being tracked right now. We have a data set of 13 billion doses, and so we're able to track and see, okay, what's going on. But they're still watching and waiting and seeing and tracking. I think over time we're going to learn more and more about this, about the repercussions of the vaccine. And I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot of people in the scientific community that will maintain their position that the benefits outweighed the risk. For the people who are having adverse events, they may not feel that was the case. Anyway, curious to know your thoughts.